The shelter had once been built as a refuge from the sky, a reinforced hollow carved beneath the streets to protect civilians from the relentless rain of bombs. Now, it was nothing more than a fractured scar beneath a ruined city, its entrance half buried under crushed masonry and twisted iron. Corporal James Whitmore stepped carefully over broken stone and ash as he descended into the silence, his boots crunching against debris that no longer resembled the world it had once belonged to. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and the faint metallic scent of destruction. His flashlight beam swept across collapsed wooden benches, torn blankets, and fragments of abandoned belongings left behind in frantic haste. This place had not been evacuated in order. It had been fled in terror. As James moved deeper, he noticed something that did not belong among the cold stillness of death. A sound, soft, weak, almost lost beneath the oppressive quiet. He froze, heart hammering, and listened again. There it was, a faint, uneven breath, trembling like a whisper, clinging desperately to life. "Hello?" he called out softly, his voice echoing off the fractured walls. No answer came, but the sound persisted. He followed it slowly, ducking beneath a collapsed beam and stepping around broken concrete until his light fell upon a small figure huddled in a dark corner. A child. Barely more than 6 or 7, her thin body curled inward, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to disappear. Her face was pale beneath streaks of dust, her wide eyes reflecting fear so deep it seemed impossible for someone so young to bear. A torn coat hung loosely from her shoulders, and beside her lay a ragged piece of cloth that might once have been a toy or a blanket or the only comfort she had known. James lowered his rifle immediately and knelt slowly to appear less threatening, his voice turning gentle, almost hesitant. "It's all right," he murmured. "You're safe now. You're not alone." The girl did not speak. She simply stared, her small form trembling as if the world itself had not yet stopped collapsing around her. Outside, the war raged on, indifferent and roaring. But here, buried beneath shattered concrete, a child had survived what entire streets had not. And James realized with quiet awe that he was not just uncovering ruins. He was standing before a fragile life that had somehow endured the end of everything. James did not move any closer at first. He could see the way the girl's eyes followed every tiny shift he made, her body flinching at the slightest sound of falling dust or distant rumble from above. The shelter, though supposedly safe, had become her entire world. A world of darkness, echoing fear and endless waiting. He slowly removed his helmet and placed it on the ground beside him, a small gesture meant to show that he was not another threat descending from the chaos of the surface. His expression softened as he spoke again, lower this time, careful not to disturb the fragile silence that had wrapped around her for so long. "My name is James," he said quietly. "I'm here to help you. You don't have to hide anymore." The girl's lips trembled, but no words came out. Instead, her fingers tightened around the scrap of cloth in her hands, knuckles pale with strain. Dust coated her hair and her small shoes were torn almost beyond recognition. She looked as if she had shrunk into herself, trying to vanish from a nightmare that refused to end. James noticed faint scratches on the wall behind her, uneven marks as though tiny hands had clawed at the concrete through waves of panic. How long had she been here? Hours? Days? The thought twisted painfully in his chest. He carefully reached into his pack and pulled out a small ration bar, unwrapping it slowly. He held it out at arm's length, not daring to invade her space. "It's okay," he murmured. "You can take it." After a long, trembling hesitation, her eyes dropped to the food. Her breath came shallow and shaky as she inched forward, each movement cautious, mistrust woven into every gesture. Finally, her small fingers reached out and wrapped around it, pulling it back to her chest as if it might be taken away again. James exhaled softly, relief and sorrow mingling in his expression. Outside, a dull explosion echoed faintly through the buried structure, sending a light tremor through the floor. The girl flinched instantly, shrinking back against the wall, her eyes wide with renewed terror. "It's all right," James said more firmly now. "I won't let anything hurt you." Yet even as he spoke the words, he knew how fragile such promises were in a world built on falling bombs and collapsing streets. Still, in that suffocating underground silence, one truth remained. This child had not surrendered to the darkness, she had endured it. And James understood that saving her would not only mean leading her back to the broken light above, it would mean guiding her away from the fear that still held her prisoner inside the ruins. James shifted slightly closer, careful not to startle her. The girl watched him with wary eyes, her breathing shallow, as if any sudden motion could cause the world to collapse all over again. He could see the exhaustion carved into her small face, a weariness far beyond her years, born not from play or laughter, but from fear and survival. He offered a gentle smile, though it carried a quiet sadness behind it. "What's your name?" he asked softly. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, almost inaudibly, her lips parted. "Anna." The name emerged like a fragile thread, hesitant and trembling, yet real. James nodded slowly. "Anna, you're very brave, do you know that?" She did not respond, but something flickered faintly in her eyes. Confusion, perhaps, or disbelief that anyone could see bravery in someone who had done nothing but hide. Above them, the sky thundered again with distant artillery. The shelter's walls shuddered softly, sending creaking echoes through the dark corridors. A thin stream of dust trickled from the ceiling and settled across the broken floor like pale snow. Anna squeezed her eyes shut, curling tighter against the cold concrete. James gently extended his hand once more, palm open and steady. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe, but we have to move slowly together." Her eyes opened again, uncertain. She stared at his hand as though it belonged to another world, one that still offered warmth and safety. Slowly, cautiously, she loosened her grip on the cloth and placed her trembling hand into his. Her fingers were cold, shockingly small. When he felt her touch, James swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. This was no longer just a rescue. It was the fragile crossing between despair and life. He stood gradually, guiding her upward. She hesitated at first, muscles tense and distrustful, but with quiet encouragement she rose shakily to her feet. Her legs wobbled as if unused to movement after too long spent hidden in shadows. "You're doing well," he said quietly. "Just keep looking at me." Together, step by careful step, they began to move toward the faint glow at the end of the tunnel, the light of a world broken yet still alive. And in that slow, trembling walk through ruins and dust, James saw something beyond the child's fear. He saw strength where the world had expected nothing. He saw life stubbornly refusing to vanish. The tunnel sloped upward, its narrow walls pressing closer with every step. James kept his grip steady, guiding Anna carefully through the debris-strewn passage as chunks of broken concrete and splintered wood crunched beneath their feet. Her breathing grew faster as the faint glow ahead strengthened, fear and anticipation twisting together in her small, fragile frame. For so long, darkness had been her only companion. Now, the light felt almost unreal. When they finally emerged from the shelter's broken entrance, the sight that awaited them was not the safety Anna might have imagined. The city above had been stripped of its former life, reduced to a jagged skeleton of collapsed buildings, charred walls, and smoke drifting slowly across the sky. The air tasted bitter, thick with ash and lingering destruction. Anna froze. Her hand tightened around James's as her gaze swept across the wreckage with silent horror. Everywhere she looked, there was nothing left untouched. No familiar streets, no comforting signs of home. Only ruin. James knelt beside her again, his voice low and steady. "I know it's frightening," he said gently, "but you're not alone anymore. I'm here." A distant siren wailed somewhere beyond the ruins, carried by the wind like a ghostly lament. Anna flinched instinctively, but she did not pull away this time. Instead, she pressed slightly closer to him, as if trying to anchor herself to the only certainty she had left. "I can't see my mother," she whispered, her voice barely audible. James felt a sharp ache in his chest. He looked around the devastated streets, knowing the truth he could not yet say aloud. "We'll find someone to help you," he replied softly. "We'll make sure you're safe." He led her slowly through the broken landscape, stepping over shattered stone and twisted metal, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for any further danger. Yet even amid the devastation, he sensed something quietly powerful unfolding. A small hand in his, a child still standing despite everything war had stripped away. Anna glanced up at him briefly, her wide eyes still shadowed by fear, but within them flickered something new. Not hope, not yet, but the faintest spark of trust. And in that fragile connection between soldier and child, the battlefield lost a fraction of its cruelty. James led Anna toward a temporary medical outpost set up among the shattered remains of what had once been a schoolyard. Tents flapped weakly in the smoky breeze, and weary medics moved between the wounded with hollow determination. The world here was still broken, but it was not silent. It breathed, struggled, endured. Anna walked beside him, her steps small and hesitant, eyes fixed on the unfamiliar faces and strange surroundings. She clutched his sleeve as if letting go might pull her back into the darkness she had barely escaped. A nurse knelt swiftly in front of her, offering a gentle smile and a blanket. "You're safe now, sweetheart," she murmured reassuringly. Anna did not speak, but she did not hide either. She allowed the blanket to be wrapped around her thin shoulders. She allowed warmth to touch her again. James stepped back slightly, watching with quiet reflection as the nurse guided her toward the medical tent. A strange stillness filled his chest, a mixture of relief and sorrow. He knew he could not follow her further. His war was not yet finished, but hers for now had paused. Anna hesitated at the entrance and turned slowly. Her eyes found him across the small distance they had already created. "Thank you," she whispered. The words were barely louder than breath, yet they struck deeper than any gunfire he had faced. James nodded, not trusting his voice to carry what his heart felt in that moment. As she disappeared into the tent, he looked toward the ruined skyline where smoke still traced the memory of destruction across the sky. Somewhere behind him, beneath concrete and shadow, the shelter that had imprisoned her continued to exist as it had, fractured and forgotten. But Anna was no longer part of its silence. She had survived, not as a miracle, not as a symbol, but as a small living defiance against a world that had tried to consume her. And as James turned to rejoin his unit, one truth settled within him with quiet certainty. Even in the deepest ruins of war, even beneath collapsed worlds and shattered skies, life could still choose to remain,